It's my pleasure to welcome both Daniel and Nina Libeskind back to the AA. It's probably almost 20 years, I think, since Daniel left the AA when he was a unit master. So, time passes very, very quickly. Since then, whether as a writer, a teacher, practicing architect in any of these fields, I think Daniel has really whatever he's taken on, he has been absolutely focused, incredibly precise. And one of the things that I think is very difficult in the field of architecture is that when you begin something, to really try and stay true to what you do. And I think in any of these fields, one of the things that I think really makes Daniel's work exceptional is the fact that he's remained true to the idea. I think this is clearly the case in the museum project that is now almost complete in Berlin. And I think the people of London are also fortunate that hopefully soon there will be a project of Daniel's here. We're all really incredibly happy that he's come back to the AA for tonight's lecture. Would you please join me in welcoming Daniel Libeskind?
Thank you, Moisen. It's indeed very nice to be here and to share with you some projects. And I actually forgot some slides. I was going to show the Bremen Philharmonic because I just had good news from Bremen that the two political parties for the first time agreed to build this project in Bremen. And for the first time there was a political agreement that in the next election both parties will support. But I don't have the slides, so it's part of actually the message that competitions are perhaps easy to win on a certain level in architecture, but what is interesting is to discover what happens after competitions. And I've selected I have three slides of three projects actually on museums, each one in a different state of readiness. One is almost complete, one is in construction, and one is going through the process of the various committees and bodies. And in fact, I spent the entire afternoon with Kensington planning authorities today. And that's what I actually would like to focus, on this secondary, less visible dimension of architecture, and how can one do something in a world which seems to be already replete with finite and closed and ready-made certainties about the future of living and being. So if I may have the first slide, please. Now, this is a competition, and I have to say, I don't know whether it's fortunate or misfortunate, but every competition that I have, every building that I'm working on is a result of a competition. I think on a horizon I might have a first commission coming, but every project is part of a competition, and that means that it's also deeply political what gets built. And I've had the same experience in all these projects, and of course in different countries, different lights, different dimensions. This is the Nussbaum house in Osnabruck, a project which I won in a competition about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. And then immediately after winning the competition, the second prize, which was Giorgio Grassi's White Cube, was promoted by a member of the jury, and then there was a tremendous controversy about why would you build in a conservative Catholic town in Osnabruck, near the cathedral, near the walls of the ancient walls of this town. This project, which is, you can see here in a competition model, standing here, this is part of the historical museums, the big wall, and the cathedral is here. Why this one? Why not just a white cube? So one had to fight, address different bodies, bring more drawings, show that there is really nothing irrational about this form, or its irrationality matches the irrationality of history of that particular site, which is replete with significance. And this project is for a citizen of Osnabruck. It's called the Nussbaum House. Felix Nussbaum was a famous painter of his time, who suffered the fate of most people who are Jews, Germans. He almost made it, but it was actually on the last train deported from Belgium to Auschwitz in 1945. And the town of Osnabruck has bought the remaining paintings, and he was a very interesting painter, almost completely wiped out of history, actually. He's not even in the last edition of the Jewish Encyclopedia. He was almost successfully eliminated as an artist, and yet in his own time, in the 20s, 30s, he was well known, exhibited widely in Berlin, received the Prix de Rome from the German government in 1932, immediately retracted in 1933, and he stands for both the catastrophe but also the artistic commitment to continue painting. And what makes him significant, and I'm not going to show you his paintings, but he continued to paint through the Holocaust. He hid in various camps. He was in Saint-Cyr in France. He was in Amsterdam. He was finally escaped to Belgium. Continued to paint and depict the events of Europe in a cataclysmic time, fully confident that the art would get him through. And ironically enough, the smell of the oil paints that was on the staircase gave him out, and he was deported. But interestingly enough, some of the paintings survived. 170, 180 of the oil paintings and many, many drawings. The city of Osnabrück wants to build a museum which is attached to the Kunsthistorische Museum, the historical museum, and the Villa Eike, which is the folk museum. By the way, Osnabrück is near the Dutch border. It's one of the oldest towns of Germany. The oldest remaining coins in Germany have been found there. So it is a topographical kind of mirror of the events of the city, and it's a historical and city museum. And this is in addition to the historical museum. It has to have contemporary galleries. It has to have special places for Nussbaum's own collections, and it has to reconnect back to the other museums. The Folk Museum, which is the Cube, which has a very interesting history also in the history of the town, because it was one of the first towns to elect the Nazis into power and was one of the strongest early centers, and the Historical Museum, which both are located just outside of the wall in the historical center. Next one, please. From the competition, you can see the buildings, and here the proposal to inscribe a kind of temporal map of places and names connected to localities of the town. Something I'm very much interested in, because I feel that towns and places are not just objects. They contain not only traces, but actually the evident invisible histories which are buried and projected on the physiognomy of these buildings and spaces in between the walls. Next one, please. And I'm sorry, the slide is reversed. I didn't see it. But I did it through a kind of choreography of dates and places which are in a microcosmic way referential to the entire town. And the town is a very beautiful ancient town. It's still preserved, and it's very conservative. Everything has been restored. There are very, very few modern buildings. And I felt that in this space, this contemporary response is, in a way, one of the tableaus of all the missing paintings, not only of Osnabrück, but of all the other towns which shared that history, which is now almost ancient history. Next one, please. The large cut wall, the bridge, the Nussbaum house sections. Next one, please. These are still from the competition, and you can see in the diagram the connections of actually 3 different buildings which are contained in this project. Next one, please. 3 different buildings, the city museums, the very narrow museum, which I call the Nussbaum Gang, the Nussbaum Way, and the Brücke, the bridge connecting both physically and urbanistically. You're looking at the town wall here. There's a major church here and a major street which runs right in between, and you get the vista of these composite parts of these different buildings colliding and in a certain tension with each other. Next one, please. No, it's too fast. Back. There's some slides that came by, yes. No. It's the other direction, back. There it is. Now, next, please. Yes. Okay. Again, the competition. No, please. Is the machine out of control, or? No. Is the machine nervous? Is it okay? All right. The Historical Museum, this is a 19th century building. The Villa Eike, turn of the century. The old gateway, which is still standing there, now part of these museums, which I sought to bring back. It's not used right now. The wall, and you can see the difficulty, the kind of cut blank wall with the three buildings connected in these 10 space, very, very, very close to all these buildings. And that is part of the idea, to bring a kind of compression or, let's say, enlargement, a inflation or a microscopic enlargement of a singular image of the walls of the town. So it's like a blow-up of a picture, bringing it very close and from different directions. Next one, please. And you can see how close it is. That's the piece of the Kunsthistorische Museum. The connection, a lighting here, and the small court of the Nussbaum house itself and the gang itself. There are the three different buildings. By the way, four together, the different courts and the different materials. The buildings are all made out of different materials. So it's actually a very modest museum. It's about 4,500 square meters. Its budget is very low. It's about social housing level budget. It's 12.5 million marks. It's a very, very inexpensive building. And that is the challenge, how to make a museum, part of the city, on a really very, very limited financial setting. Next one, please. And just in the early models, the cutaway through this very narrow space, the major parts of the museum, the cafes and the galleries, another connecting museum here of the Brücke and that historical museum. I called the museum actually in the competition, I always give a name because it's easier to read the name than look at the drawings, Museum ohne Ausgang, the museum without an exit. And what I really sought to do was to involve the participants in the process of looking at the history of the town in such a way that there is really no exit from it. Of course, there has to be a physical exit out of a building, but no intellectual or theoretical exit out of the history, because it involves the old folk museum, its significance in the 20th century, particularly in 1933, folk art and its relationship to the historical collections, which are again very formidable and important, and the new contemporary exhibitions in this museum together with the Nussbaum remnant. Next one, please. So here is, you notice an altered plan, and I'll tell you in a minute why it's altered. Here it is. By the way, this is a central entrance. It's not simply a circulation space. It's actually the narrowest museum that could be made under German regulations. It's 2.3 meters. And I wanted to make the narrowest museum because of how to view the work in it. It's not about getting far away from the work and looking and admiring it. It's to be close. And this transitional zone, the Brücke, has a very different program. It's the undiscovered painting, newly discovered paintings of Osnabruck, not only of Nussbaum, and the main museum, which is both the formal and traditional part of the city. Next one, please. And here is another, just a roof view, which would orient you to, here is the old Kunsthistorische Museum. The entrance cut in a rather violent way here, and right at the point of the intersection of these wedge-like forms. Next one, please. And a model here would be the existing building, but I just show you the building. The Nussbaum Gang, made of concrete. It's a complete concrete building, both inside and outside. The Nussbaum Brücke, the bridge of the newly discovered paintings and newly discovered history of Osnabruck, which is important, is completely in metal with some very small windows. And the largest volume of the building, which is the bulk of the public activities, is a building of the Nussbaum house itself, which is actually made out of wood. So keep in mind, metal, concrete, wood as the palette, which organizes both the places, the references of the buildings, but also a very complex architectural whole, because even though it's a very small building, it's actually many multiplying layers of detailing, and that is part of it, to handle the detailing of the building in a very different way between the wood, the concrete, and the metal. Next one, please. Since everything is very, very close, you can hardly get away from a door, a window, or a exit into the collections. So this is from the Pappengang, the one of the streets. The main entrance to the museum is in this space from the monumental entry of the wall, and of course through here. Next one, please. Nussbaum painting, and I found this photograph in some archive, and it's interesting. He painted all these monumental paintings, which are very, very small because they had to fit in these small rooms. And I thought this is the experience that the visitor should have. Not to aestheticize too much, but to come this close and have the wall behind. And of course, I argued the city authorities said, no, shouldn't we look at the paintings? I said it's possible to look at them both. There's the Nussbaum Sammlung, there's the Gang, and some of the paintings would be and drawings would be shown in a really close-up way, in a very flattened formation. The others in a very long space. Next one, please. So the temporal dimension of what is in the building is part of it. There's the Nussbaum Gang. From the outside, there is the Brücke. There is the continuous ramp connecting from the entrance, the two levels. There's the underground here. And next one, please. And again, cut through the main space of the entrance, the Gang, with its wedge-like skylight next to the wall. Next one, please. This is a very special space where the light falls just along the walls, and this is the connector between the Nussbaum house, which is here, the bridge itself, and the actual space of the entrance. So I think you can perhaps see in this diagram the conflicting scales of presentation, and also the conflicting scales of the building within a very, very small metric distance. Next one, please. And here's a cutaway, which gives you, this is actually not a juxtaposition of two photographs, but it is a literal cut through the building. You can see the level, entrance level, second level, and the two levels of the Gang compressed close to each other, and yet without any apparent means of diagrammatically organizing the building into a Rundgang, or a round way around the building. Of course, it's very important to have a logical transition to the building, and I sought to do that, but at the same time, without giving the public an image of it in space. So it's about the walking through the space without actually knowing, although everyone gets to the horizon of the Brücke, everyone gets through the bridge, and everyone visits the historical museum as an entrance to the next phase. But it's not about making a picture of the figure. It is giving the figure not as a phenomenon, not as something which will appear or disappear, but really as a kind of substantial element of the spirit of the place. Next one, please. And here it is. This is the wooden elevation here, interrupted by the concrete stair, which is the main stair of the museum, outside of the staircases through the Gang. And you can see the concrete elements, some windows. You can see the height of the historical museum and the Villa Eike, and you can see this as a kind of a background, very dense background and a very empty foreground in the space of the city. Next one, please. The windows in their construction, referring rather specifically to phenomena of the city and of geometry. Next one, please. The wooden elements of the wooden construction, which is, if you notice, it's wooden panels, oak, but it is a kind of a reversal, the idea of reversing the wooden construction. So it's a kind of inside-out wooden logic here, as it is with the concrete and with the steel. Next one, please. And finally, from the early competition perspective and how it works. Now, why I'm showing you this, because something happened to me. Always, every project has something unpredictable, something occult, or something not truly rational. You saw that big wall in the competition proposal, and there was really, it was a museum without an exit, but it was also a museum without an entrance, because I couldn't figure out how to enter this. If something has no exit, has no entrance. But I did draw a line right here. This is the Nussbaum Gang. You see the diagonal line in plan running through here, right here. And you will see the three arches of the old synagogue on the street adjacent to this place. And I drew this line with these three arches. Next one, please. And lo and behold, I mean, really, it is uncanny. These three arches, although they were not of the synagogue, they were of a buried 500-year-old Swedish bridge, which no one knew existed under the site, were discovered during the construction. And of course, it was an uproar, one of the oldest things discovered in the town, 500-year-old Swedish bridge. No one knew it was there. And it's so lucky because I think Grassi's project and all the other top projects could not be built because they were exactly on this bridge. But because I didn't know how to enter, because I didn't know how to resolve the entrance situation, I drew this invisible line with these 3 arches, which should have theoretically went through it. It opened up the museum. And it's really interesting because some journalists in the town accused me of having some, I don't know, occult knowledge of the archaeology of Osnabruck. But I swear, I didn't know anything about it. I just felt that these invisible lines, which are always in a drawing and always in a space, are really there. And sometimes they can be made visible through an architectural act. Next one, please. So I've now incorporated this bridge, which is indeed a treasure. And there it is, lying in this disrupted space, which now has slightly different profile, but comes exactly through the critical space of that drawing. Next one, please. And opens the museum through, so the main entrance is on top of this bridge. This bridge is restored. The town is extremely proud of it because it is an incredible thing to discover that there was Swedish legacy there. And it's a very charming, interesting bridge, which was lying so low. And it's interesting that nobody knew about it. But the men who ran the cellars of the museum used to store apparently a lot of beer somewhere below. And everybody thought it was just some catacomb. Next one, please. And here it is. It's a fragment model. Here's the Kunsthistorische Museum. Here's the Nussbaum Gang. Here is that trajectory, which now with the full force ends at the wall, that old wall. And here is the bridge exposed and the line, which was only on paper, now truly penetrating to the building. And of course, there are these 2 cut-off elements, which were always a part of it. The element which is a kind of open element, just a cut-off element of the Nussbaum Gang, the Brücke, and the trajectory through this strong line of history, connected now very much into the scheme. Next one, please. And here it is in a sort of model, very rough model, how it works in the townscape. Next one, please. And in construction. Next one, please. And you can see one of the churches. You can see the historical museum. You can see how close this building is coming. There's that wedge shape and the bridge. Next one, please. And the construction of the gang, which is now beginning. I think that this building is at a very fast track. It will be finished really by August, the construction by August, September of this year. It will open by May of next year to the public, which is an anniversary. The town celebrates its anniversary. So it will be opened just a few months after the Berlin Museum, the Jewish Museum in Berlin opened. Next one, please. And here's the wall growing in front here. There's the bridge here. Next one, please. And the bridge here with the Villa Eike, that headquarters, that famous headquarters of the party, and its trajectory as a kind of a dead end in between this very, very narrow space, very long, 40 meters, more than 40 meters in length. Next one, please. And a self-portrait of Nussbaum. And I always thought of this self-portrait, a place without any exit, without any entrance. And yet in these walls, this identity card, these eyes, this world does have an exit. And it's interesting that sometimes one might even stumble upon such an exit rather than predicate it on a theoretical premise. Next one, please. Okay, something very different. A museum in London. It's a different history, and it's a different place. And yet the museum is always tied to history. It's never just a whimsical form which is going to be built. But I was impressed how little models, which one makes, which are 1 to 500, can be suddenly blown up to very large pictures. And I didn't expect this. Next one, please. So one has to learn from a response, the public response. How does the public, feel about a building? And as I said, in Nussbaum it was in a small scale, but in Berlin I had the same kind of headlines. Well, rightfully so. How does this building fit next to a Baroque courthouse and so on? Next one, please. So I was a little bit familiar, but I enjoyed the humor, and in fact it gave me ideas because I immediately said, and by the way, I have to say, Cecil Baumont is here, and he's not just an engineer, but a creative collaborator on this project, and we've worked very closely, and it's really not a project about architecture and engineering. It's about a spirit, and I just have to say a few words about Cecil later on, but he's not, he's a kind of magus of major proportions with numbers and structures. And I had the privilege of working with Peter Rice, both on the Berlin Museum and on City Edge project. But with Cecil, we formed a very different understanding of what could be built. And I remember Cecil said to me, we should study this thing because people think it's boxes, but it isn't. So how do we communicate? Next one, please. And I like this one very much, the kind of German and English idea of Prince Albert and Queen Victoria, which, if you read it, I don't remember where to start. Next one, please. And this was my favorite. It appeared in the Times of London, a major editorial by somebody, Mr. Mogg. And it said, actually, I was amazed because I never had the following of Mao, I mean, that's the kind of billions of people. And, but again, the idea of the barbaric, the idea, and again, this was not a tabloid, it's one of the papers I truly respect, the Times of London. So I knew that I have a big job to really overcome and to communicate the fact that the building is not barbaric, the fact that it is not a epuration and a Brave New World, but it is in fact wholly integrated to the very contemporary ideas of the founders of the V&A, Cole and Webb and Waterhouse and William Morris. I mean, these were truly contemporary architects. So, yes, next one, please. And there it is, that city of the V&A, as I call it, because one has to be aware that it's not really just the V&A, the Natural History Museum. All the complex buildings on Exhibition Road were meant to be, as Henry Cole called them, a unique area of towers in all of Europe. This is the most unique, not just London, it's unique to Europe. And these various architects had a very contemporary notion of architecture because clearly it's not one building, it's an accretion of buildings over a long period of time, each one mirroring the faith that contemporary art, architecture, and design has a future. This was never designed as an exercise in retrospect, but a very progressive museum, as a result of the great exhibition of 1851, in order to involve the public, to bring design from the past into the future. And there's the site, the Boiler House site on Exhibition Road, Cromwell Road, the big tower, and this is the last kind of available site, Pirelli Court. So a really fantastic challenge, how to integrate that history, how to find the forms necessary to tie, not only functionally, but spiritually, with the idea of this complex set of not only streetscapes, but roofscapes and scales of thought. Next one, please. And here in a very large model, I think one can see it, from Albert Hall and the memorial, down to the addition to the symmetries and complexities of the museum areas, to the big towers. And I think it was Webb who said that any architect working on this site who's going to do a public building should be aware that they must exercise sensitivity to the myriad of differences necessary to bring the harmony to the whole. Now, he really emphasized the idea of differences between the Italian Renaissance, the Spanish Renaissance, the secondary and tertiary lanterns and minarets which are involved in a museum. And when you read it out of context, it sounds like the most lunatic thought of Derrida, but in fact, it's about the harmony of the entire and what the harmony needs to be played out among these very important public buildings on Exhibition Road. So there is the contribution to the 21st century galleries, and by the way, it is not more of the same. It's not just another building for the museum. It's a very ambitious brief. I think the V&A as a client is incredible. They have a vision that this is not just an addition of more gallery space. It's a building that redefines also how people come to the V&A, and not just to look at the objects that are famous, but to get involved with new technologies, new presentations of work, and a kind of introduction to the pleasures of this enormous city. Next one, please. One of Cecil's incredible attempts to do a mathematical analysis of a point in space in a spiral movement. Next one, please. Because as you will have noticed, maybe you have seen the project, but it is a spiral. But next one, please. It's not really a spiral which is centered on any one point or any one trajectory. Next one, please. It's a spiral that has and numerous trajectories, and it's not centered on a single point or on a single axial movement. And I think that is the idea of William Morris. That is the idea of those architects, that you have the classical rooting of culture in a infrastructure, but that its trajectory is free and mobile and moving. And that is actually the inspiring motto on the doorways of the Museum of the V&A. You know, it says inspiration and knowledge. And this was really my only key to the building, because I just read those words, inspiration, knowledge, carved high up, but they really meant it. Inspiration on the left and knowledge on the right, I think. Next one, please. And this ribbon, this continuity of that wall, because as I mentioned, it is not a set of boxes. It is a continuous logic of a singular element, which is the wall, the walls of the museum as they ascend in section and in plan, and provide the orientation both for exhibits and for the public. Next one, please. Next one, please. And from the competition, still kind of the structure of how the fast movements and how the cores and all sorts of, yes, there are the elevations of the existing. Next one, please. And from the competition still, the importance of transforming from the street and from the geometries of what is visible on the street to the roofscapes, which really begin already on the street and wholly lean towards a cantilevered structure overlooking the Pirelli court. Next one, please. And here's a very early model, which deals with light. That the geometries of this spiral form bring a very meditative light of the 21st century. It's not more artificial light. It's a light that has, in fact, a spiritual quality that is in the museum, in its ceramics, in its materiality, and in the way the objects have found their place in that museum. It's not like the Louvre. Next one, please. And I have to say, it's not like the Louvre because it's so complex. The Louvre is relatively simple. And that was my basic idea in the competition. Not to try to create a linear building A to B and demystify and give a kind of simple reading of the V&A, but to reinforce its most wonderful qualities, which means that almost everybody who's in the V&A is lost in it. Don't you think so? You know, you penetrate those walls, and I love that. I think to see that no lifetime can ever grasp this depth is part of introducing this Ariadne-like thread, which from the street, of course, is illuminated. It has the lobbies and public spaces and ascends, of course, without competing with the Cromwell Road Tower, which is still, I think, more than 21 meters higher than the building itself. By the way, the building looms large in the writings of the Times, but it only occupies about 5% of the total land and the buildings of the V&A. Next one, please. So the scale is important to get. And from the competition, again, the notion, the building is not glazed, but it was just a way to show that these floor plates and these rotating plans with these very dramatic triangular spaces. And everyone always said, well, Ms. Libeskind, what are you going to put here? We're always conceived to be part of the main spaces as theaters, as kind of valleys which can be used as projecting spaces for laser projections, for videos, and don't interfere with the main exhibition requirements of the plates. Next one, please. And here is, I like this photograph because we used to have 4 of these Abbey Road beetles coming in, but 2 of them were stolen early on. But this is the gateway, this is Exhibition Road. One enters under that spiral and through a new court and a new loggia created between the street and the repositioned. You will notice the web screen is not here, but it is used in a different way in the scheme. Next one, please. And here it is from the section. There is Exhibition Road, looking towards Cromwell Road, the 2 bridges, the building ascending from its lobbies to the large exhibition spaces, to the resource center and the cafe and orientation center, using the old transportation system to deliver into this very large exhibition space, which is the temporary exhibition space and education facilities closely aligned with it. Next one, please. And there is the section, current section, very close to the original. Connection, more emphatic from the underground, bringing the public directly from the underground through the new use of the arcade of the web screen, which has it used to stand here. It's about 9 meters, but now it's back into a kind of loggia, an arcade that Webb always intended it to be, auditoriums, temporary exhibitions, the lobbies with shops, the large floors of the exhibitions, and the resource center, orientation, and the cafe, where the public can actually see and orient themselves by looking at this very dramatic, extraordinary piece of workmanship of British architects and artists, which is actually on the roofs. The roofs are among the most exciting landscapes in the world. And I think this is the first time that people will be able to see how the buildings grew together. And next one, please. And here it is in a kind of the development of the spiral. You can see the wall and a kind of animation. And you can see that it's relatively tame at the levels where the classical street scape continues. And as it moves towards the roofscape right here, it moves farther away, and of course it no longer is visible from Exhibition Road. So the spiral form of the building should not be conceived as a formal device, but rather as something that is mentally and kinetically put together by the visitors, since no one will ever see the form in the round. It will be pieced together from perspectival views, from glimpses in Exhibition Road, from the way the circulation works within the building, and then finally by looking down from the top of the building at the today inaccessible facades of the sgraffito panels on the Henry Cole wing, for example. Next one, please. So it is really to illuminate. It is in plan, and I think it's important to see the heavy walls, the large, the kind of relationships of space, and the Pirelli Garden also redesigned, because I feel that it should become much more part, a very meditative but interesting part, which the museum can use for activities, fashion shows, celebrations. It is a museum that I think will, in the 21st century, attract even greater crowds, because people will be interested how those objects interact in the craft and technology of the present day. And that is the mission, to involve the public in a hands-on experience, and not only on simulated wall presentations. And I was, if you have been to the Natural History Museum, you'll see that new presentations are all oblique, and all these walls have been installed in order to be able to project things. Well, here, the idea was from the very beginning to involve that as part of a meditation on 21st century past and future. Next one. And here's a typical floor, and I just showed that the space is not just one inarticulate space. There are spaces for demonstrations, for activities of master classes, large spaces for exhibitions, and here are those small 150 people, 100-person theaters off the main spaces, and coagulated into the circulation. Of course, what's very important is these 6 bridges, which in a centrifugal way connect critical spaces of the existing galleries. Today, Constable galleries are not really accessible. Ceramic galleries are not easily accessible. So, in fact, the building will be a true entrance, not only for the handicapped and the elderly because of its elevator systems, and it has many of them, the fast cores and the slower cores, but to the public reaching this building from the Cromwell Road entrance, which will continue, of course, to act as a main entrance. Next one, please. And another floor plate. Next one, please. Here, I think one can see that the floors are not just projections of a singular system. They are each one responding to another view and to another logic of the brief. Next one, please. And section showing the bridges and the variety of spaces around. This is a north-south section. Theaters and underground. Next one, please. Through the stairs. Next one. With the cores and very close to the light. It's a cutaway model. Express elevators, normal elevators, cores, stairs. Next one, please. And the actual spatial logic of the building. Next one, please. It's not really a diagram in a drawing, but it's how these spaces are actually together, and the form as it is penetrated by, of course, very normal horizontal floors. Next one, please. And this is just a sampling of a few floors together in this construction. Next one, please. The web screen today. Next one, please. And here is a perspective of it from actually from the underground. I propose to do something very difficult. There's the street level on Exhibition Road. There's the bridge into the museum itself. And there's the loggia of the web screen used as the main entrance from the underground. Of course, I could have just kept the screen where it was. It's easy to build a building with it there. I could have dismantled it and put it in the garden, or sort of said it's not useful. But I sought to do what Webb wanted to do. It was supposed to be an arcade. It was never supposed to be a 9-meter tall barricade. And he never succeeded in making the arcade because of the boilers. So bringing the building, back, the arcade back into existence through Webb's logic, and making the screen, of course, visible for the public from all levels of the museum. Next one, please. And that's an interesting perspective interior from one of the bridges. The interior view, it has mezzanine levels, light coming down. And I show this because it's important to know the scale of it. It doesn't have this institutional scale. It's a scale for where people can explore the museum at their own rate and in their own time, because there will be new systems of guidance and orientation. Next one, please. Next one. Earlier models, kind of wild. As wild as the Victorian ideas, full polychromy. Next one, please. And next one, please. And Cecil's brilliant finite analysis. I love this drawing because it shows the cool colors where there's no conflict and the hotspots in the mind of the computer. And of course, Cecil will be better qualified to speak about it, but it's an incredible building of the building mentally. And I have to say that only I and Cecil believed that the building did not need further structure, that it was able to support itself by the logic of the walls. But during the competition, there was an engineer on the jury who said to us that this building will never be built without at least the elevator core supporting the walls. But working with Cecil is always exhilarating because he's a true believer in numbers and in the logic of structure, which is not just taken from some external system. And he did verify in an inimitable way, which is his own, that this building is independent, is free, does not need any cores to stabilize it. And I think that's also a very new relationship between the architecture and the engineering. I should probably one day make a lecture on how we work together. You should be speaking, Cecil, because it's a different idea. It's not just the architect needing an engineer to make a wild building stand up, nor an engineer who's telling the architect, make this system here and this system there. It's a creative redefinition of an erasure, actually, of the boundaries between a structure, symbol, emblematic, and functional space. And I think that will be more and more the trajectory of the architecture that I like, and the architecture that is being built today in different countries. Next one, please. The fractals, I can't go into it, but the geometries of the fractal tiles with this non-periodic, non-repetitive system, which incarnate, of course, the logic of Owen Jones's grammar of ornament, which I used because the grammar of ornament now has taken one further step where the grammar of ornament is not only the pattern of the wall system, but is integrated into the way the wall actually looks and the way it is manifested to the public through these three ceramic shapes. Next one, please. So it's a very logical, or here it is. These lines, by the way, are just the tiles disappearing into microscopic forms. Next one, please. And Cecil's drawing again. What I like about this one is that the fixing system somehow, through the logic of the entire unfolded elevation, is actually grounded in a very charismatic geometry of the golden section. Next one, please. So, in fact, the golden section is part of the spiral of the fractal. Cecil's discovery of this will be in his next book, and I'm the best advertiser for it because we need it in architecture. Here is the complexities of building on that site. And of course, it's a very difficult site because of what is around it and how to construct it. It needs an ingenious logic to it. Next one, please. The court. Next one, please. Next, please. Next. The sections, more recent sections. Next one, please. And next one. Henry Cole and Webb. Next one, please. Exhibition Road. Again, very difficult to show this building because one will never be able to step away from it in this way. It's always will be seen in partial views. Next one, please. And it's the partiality of these views. Again, views. Very difficult to show because, again, this shows only the heights, but the discovery of that logic and of that tradition of this museum. Next one, please. And again, a gateway from Heathrow, in a very subtle way, opening another trajectory and rerouting and being able, one is able to reorganize the image of the building and its function, make it accessible, make it alive, give it the spirit of Henry Colin Webb. And I have to say that after I did this competition, one of the curators in the V&A said, Mr. Libeskind, do you know this little drawing that we have in the collection? And it turned out to be that Henry Cole, who designed this very severe building, designed, I don't know why, a hexagonal spiral on this side, about twice as tall as this one. It was kind of a different aesthetic, but the spiral, and I don't know where did, I've asked experts, historians, where did Henry Cole get the idea of a spiral on this side? But there is the genius loci of a space. I do believe it. And without believing it, one would never do architecture, because you have to believe it in order for it to happen in some future time. Next one, please. Otherwise, yes. Believing it yes, there would be no progress in if one didn't believe in it, because it hasn't yet happened. So we have to believe in it. That's Kafka. But that's what brings me to the last project. I'll be very fast because I'm keeping you here. It's my passport, and I always take it very seriously. It's an inscription in my passport when I came to Germany, and it says in German that Mr. Libeskind is allowed to do one building, the extension of the Berlin Museum and the Jewish Museum, till it's realized. And that's his visa, which is a very unusual visa. Really, I've asked countless people in Germany, did anybody have an inscription by hand in a visa? I mean, the Germans, like the French, like the English, are very, they're bureaucratic. They stamp things. No, I have yet to find a single visa with a handwritten message. And the message says that I have to not only plan it and do the design, but realize it, because that's why I came there. But it's very funny, because every time I'm through the borders, people say, so, is it now finished? I mean, can we get the, do you still, the visa, is it now finished? And I keep saying not yet, because, again, it's about politics. I won the competition in 1989, well, Osnabruck has now called, the building is only 3 years old in Osnabruck. It's the third election which is coming up. One mayor loves the project, one mayor hates the project, another politician thinks it's a waste of money, another one thinks it's a good thing for the town. 5 governments of Berlin, left-wing, right-wing, coalitions, all sorts of, the wall came down, reunification of the city, of the country, the end of Cold War, and yet I have to always say I'm working on it. It's despite all these things, I'm supposed to realize it. And of course, I think it is a mission, because this museum was in the planning for 25 years, 30 years in Berlin, and involved a lot of thinking about how do you present the history of the city of Berlin and its Jewish history in an integrated building. And I have to say, I won the competition. There were 180, 190 architects. All did the same thing. I was the only one to do something different. All the other architects, to put it simply, said, here is the Berlin Museum, and here's the Jewish Museum, and it's got a door and a key, and you can go into it or not go into it. And there's the Jewish Museum, there's the Berlin Museum. And I did something different. I said, you can't ever close or open the Jewish Museum. The museum is not something you can either visit or not visit, because it cuts through backward and forward to the history of Berlin, which is one of the great cities, and has one of the most illustrious and tragic histories of any city as well. So that's the idea, an integration across the abyss, across the impossible relationship, and again, the fatality and the hope which is implicated for people who don't know this history very well, which are the Berliners of today and of tomorrow. So that's the mission, the integration of that history. It's a city museum, funded completely by taxpayers, and that means that not only here in London do I have to address citizens group, citizens in Kensington, people who are skeptical, people who don't want anything on the site, but one has to convince people in a process. And I'm fortunate that there are democracies, and that there is tolerance, and that people who initially say, no, we will not tolerate such a thought, do listen, and after a long process, one can even have them say, it is a good idea. I didn't expect it to look like that, and it works. And I'm going to come into it. So that's somehow what I want to communicate, that one shouldn't start with a cynical attitude and say this will never work, nobody will ever build these buildings. Yes, I think reality is always more adventurous than architects anyway, and reality is always ahead. It's always more exciting and more full of possibilities than anyone can imagine. And it's baffling how one would respond to anything, because reality is so much more incredible than we can ever think it is. And yet to stick to the facts, that's what I try to do. Next one, please. Now, the building is about the 6 letters of the name Berlin. I called it in between the lines, but I really called it also the name Berlin. From all the Berlin Jews who are called Berlin, to the Berliner Jews who are called Berliner, and on to the 200,000 names which have been erased and eliminated and murdered in the history of that city. Next one, please. So those 6 letters and that 6-pointed star, which related to those 6 letters. And I just have to say what the building is about, very quickly. It's about the matrix of irrationality in reality, the planning of Berlin, the catastrophes, and the remaining fragments, and how the city comes together over and over again into new constellations which have that history. The matrix of connections, which of course bring us to the names and addresses of citizens of Berlin, Jews, Germans, so closely linked, assimilated, intermarried, and broken apart. So names, addresses, numbers associated with these things are very important. Then of course, I'm very much interested in specific 2 texts, a musical text of Schoenberg, which was written right next to this museum, Moses and Aaron, which is an incomplete opera which I sought to complete because I know that Schoenberg did not just not complete it. It's not completable musically, it is only completable in the spacing of the void of the city of Berlin. And the second text which I used, not as an inspiration but as a mechanism, is to interpret a single guidebook to Berlin, which is the Einbahnstraße by Walter Benjamin. How does one open this one-way street into a light across the 60 stations of the apocalypse, which are described in that fragment of a guidebook. Again, so it's about names, addresses, people, kind of para-architectural. It's not purely architectural because architects usually are limited to walls and windows and doors. But how all this other material, how is this all the other material sort of incarnated in the objects? Next one, please. The old map, and you can see here Gendarmenmarkt, right? You can see Unter den Linden. You can see Brandenburg Gate, Pariser Platz. You can see the octagon of the Leipziger Platz. You can see the perfect circle of the Rondell. And you can see the Berlin Museum, built all by the same architect, Gerlach. He did these shapes. Octagon, Baroque architect, octagon, square, circle, and the courthouse. And that's the present Berlin Museum on axis with Schenkel. And even though I did this competition before the wall came down, I oriented the building towards this eastern part because I said even then that, that when it comes to the Berlin, Cold War means nothing. It is the Jews of Berlin that unify the city across its political divisions. And that is the notion of the Urban as Well as project. Next one, please. Which fortunately happened because the wall was eradicated. Here it is, next to the Mendelssohn building, courthouse, IBA buildings, 19th century buildings, and the huge projects that I studied in Alexanderplatz, but they're here also in the western part, built in the 60s and 70s. Next one, please. Competition, still early models. Next one, please. And just this diagram, just to explain it very briefly, the underground, that's another thing which is, it was the only scheme to do in the competition. Not only did I not have a doorway and a separate Jewish museum, but one that cuts across, but I also was the only scheme who proposed no visible bridge between the Baroque building and the new extension. The bridge is completely in the underground, and it's a whole museum in itself. Then there's the void, which has 6 aspects to it, with these 60 bridges running across it, which runs across the entire hundreds of meters of the site, and the 7 independent buildings, which are, of course, the extension of the whole museum, with the different departments of the Stadtmuseum. Next one, please. And those are put together in a complex way in terms of exploration. So there is the entrance. It's part of that void which cuts through the museum. This is the underground level in the Baroque building, an entrance three streets, one leading to the dead end. I call it the Holocaust Tower. It's the end of Berlin as we have known it. It's a different city. There are Jews today coming from Russia, but it's a different city altogether. It's the end, in a way. The second one, it's exile, emigration, not only of Jews and of exiles and of Bertolt Brecht and Albert Einstein and the famous Berliners, but it's the exile of the city from itself. And that's what this exhibition actually shows, that Berlin is actually also exiled, emigrated from itself, and it's a kind of double of itself. And the longest axis here, the street of the main stair, is the continuity of the collections across the void and into the building as a large public museum. Next one, please. Here it is in construction, and you can see this labyrinth, very deep underground, which is to be connected, and already, of course, is connected to the Baroque building underground, providing two separate but neighborly buildings, very different and yet very closely aligned. Next one, please. There is a very recent photograph in the Altbau, in the old building, in the Baroque building. There is a kind of violent but very limited laceration in the building, which is a staircase. Only a stair, but it is a stair that takes one very, very deep down into this underground. And one should remember that in the old building will be shown the Enlightenment history of Berlin, of the Enlightenment, Schinkel, Moses Mendelssohn, Hegel, Lessing, the great painters and so on. And in the new building, the history from the beginning of the Reich, 1870s, end of 19th century, beginning of 20th, across the 30s to the catastrophes, and again to the new Berlin and today. Next one, please. It's still in a model form, but it looks pretty much like this. The road to this is where one would stand getting down that main staircase from that cut of the void. Here is the main stair, here is the garden, and here is the road to the Holocaust, which runs across the two. And of course, these are exhibition spaces of a very special kind. Next one, please. And a photograph from some magazine, which is very difficult to photograph because it doesn't yet have, it's difficult to photograph, but it has this feeling. It is the underworld. And at the same time, it's not it's a foundation, because each of these spaces is oriented towards light as a result of the fact that the entire plane of the pedestrian circulation is sloping towards the void, which means that there is light on the main stair coming from very high up. There's 6 cuts of the main. The garden, of course, brings a different light and a shortcut out of the museum, and the Holocaust void has a completely closed-in acute light falling laterally. So 3 different. There is no closure in the underground. The underground is open, but in a very unexpected ways to the different exhibits. Next one. And here is actually the first void in the underground, which is going to show the old remnants of the Jewish community in Berlin, which is there already since the 14th century. And the light here, by the way, the light is 27 meters by the time it falls here, 27 meters high. The building is 22 meters on the street, but 27 at this point and lower at some other points. And it's amazing that it falls, and it's kind of a daylight, but by the time it gets so low down, it has an eerie quality of Berlin. It's very lively, and it illuminates the exhibitions which stand around the space for the visitors, who are very, very deep down, 28 meters below, from the upper levels. Next one, please. Here is another of the voids, still in construction, but you can see the bridges here. You can see the end of it. You can see the light. Next one, please. And the bridges themselves, which are, of course, it is a straight line, and of course always at right angles, always the orientation, although nobody can walk in it. That's interesting. No one who uses the void element is the straight line, which would seem to be the shortest distance between 2 points, but in fact, it's the one which is wholly inaccessible. And I struggled with the engineers on this project, because they said, Mr. Libeskind, you've got the void, let's put the electrical lines, let's put the, all the lines, we've got a straight line in the building. And I did everything possible to keep out all the technical equipment out of that straight line. And it's not easy, because technology goes in a straight line. But to detour it, to make it go on the side, and to leave the straight line, albeit disconnected, in that eternal continuity throughout Berlin, because it's there. I mean, the building really doesn't end. Mentally, it continues as a dotted line running between the Mies van der Rohe, Karlsbad 24, and Paul Celanhof, and across Europe, America, the world. It's an orienting piece of invisibility. Next one, please. And the windows are very simple, straight. What I should tell you is that looking at the space for the visitors, in these bridges. One is very close to other visitors and at the same time very far. And that's a moment in the museum. One is close with other visitors and one is also far because they are not seen across these 120 symmetrical doorways. Next one, please. And here it is, the last void in the building. There are 6 of these voids. The 5th and 6th void are here, which is, again, these are empty. They are not insulated. They are not museum spaces in any classical sense. This one is next to the temporary exhibition space. But they will be related to the exhibits. One can use them, but they are not things to hang on the wall there and sculptures to put in. They have to be used as part of the logic of whatever happens in the temporary exhibitions, and they challenge, of course, the visitors and the curators to cope with the bridges and with this silent space. Next one, please. And there it is when you, from another level. Of course, they are visible from all levels of the museum, these spaces of the line. Next one, please. And there is the Holocaust void with its temporary door, but that's a very special space. It's very high, completely in concrete, with these 10-meter pores, and it has a very acute angle here, which one cannot really see the window. The light is completely flattened, and even I think the French visitors who visited the building, who are very talkative during the Nina, my wife and partner, tells me this. When they come to the space, they don't talk. Because the space is nothing, and the space is the kind of geometrically also the reversal of the void, and it will contain nothing. I suggested to the Berlin Senate that this space should be completely empty. Of course, the Senate says, why do we build and spend money if we're going to have empty spaces? Why do we need the void? Why can't you squeeze the building together? It's about cubic meters of space. But I was fortunate that people finally understood that some of the history is good just to leave empty, because it's not about didactic stories, about narratives. It's about a certain light and a certain consciousness, and perhaps a single signature of a Berliner would be the last signature, and we have them in the archives. Every Berliner signed their name as they were deported. And by the way, interestingly enough, I have to make this comment. I come from Poland, from Lodz, just on the periphery highway of Berlin, where I was born. But all the Berlin Jews were first deported to Lodz. And it's amazing because it was the counter-world to Berlin. The Berlin was the high cultural elite, totally integrated bourgeois world, and Lodz represented the low class, the low working class. And Jews on their way to Majdanek, Auschwitz, wherever, Riga, were first put into the Lodz ghetto. It's interesting. So that's the space of encounter. Next one, please. It's looking up. Next one, please. And the section through the main staircase. You can see the bridges. The upper level is archives, libraries, offices and meeting rooms, the 2 main levels of the exhibitions, the temporary exhibitions, and the underground level, which I showed before. And of course the windows, which are here represented in drawing, but they're emblematical recordings of the history cutting through those names and addresses. And I always say they're not really just A to B to C, some simple idea of projection of geometries, because they are also the physiognomies of a certain gaze or look across the walls and across these vistas of a now transformed Berlin. So that's the logic of the windows. Next one, please. And here is now the staircase, the main staircase. These 2 cross windows appear almost at the ground level of the museum, so you can get the idea of this very dramatic verticality and emptiness at the main circulation point, which you reach from the underground. Next one, please. And the structure follows actually in some way the materialization of these light cuts, because the external world is very, very light, and it needed support. And it's tied back to the strongest part of the building, which is that void. So that's the kind of the effect of it. And these are very deep skylights. There are 6 of them, where the light is filtered in a very precise way across a whole floor of the libraries and workrooms. So the light coming down has a very geometric alignment, whereas the light coming from the straight window is different. And those are the only 7 elements here, and the beams. Next one, please. And there is that looking down. Right now it's very dark because there's no illumination, but that's from the underground. One is coming from the underground up temporary exhibition floor and to the main floors across the space. And again, this window is very different. From the bottom you can hardly see it. It's very, very abstract looking. And finally, you can actually put your feet over the window, and it just ends over the window. And That's part of it. The luminosity of the foot seems sometimes inaccessible and sometimes illuminated by a very straight cut. So the logic of the stair. Next one, please. And looking back down towards the construction from one of the, and it's a difficult space to photograph, but I think it changes as one walks in or out of the exhibits, and there are several different routes the visitors can take. And there's a main staircase in the tip of the building, which unfortunately I have no photographs, but is also a very dramatic orienting element within the geometry of what you see on the streets. Next one, please. The bridges in the early part of the construction, I can show them that these are really independent buildings, and these Walter Benjamin connections sort of really tied up 7 buildings together. Next one, please. And the 7 buildings, of course, are the departments of the Berlin Museum, the Stadtmuseum, because it's not a museum of painting only or graphics. It's fashion, it's textiles. The Jews are very involved in the 20s and 30s. It was a famous city for textile manufacturing, steel technology, science, music, theater, and cinema. It's a museum not of a Kaiser or of a king, of the collections of the citizens. And a picture that no one will ever see, but I just show it because it's a cutaway for architects. Things which will never be seen, which are the symmetry of the bridges, the line, and the relationships as they are now buried into the building in a kind of, a doubling. Next one. And the building and construction, very important to relate it. It's not standing on a free-standing site, just like the V&A, very close to famous buildings, Mendelssohn, Baroque, housing, and it's very much part of the liveliness and the tip slightly protruding onto Lindenstrasse. Next one, please. The wall of the void, again, part of that straight line with 2 symmetrical entrances always. And of course, this is not just an architectural device, but a museological device. On one side, one will have paintings of Max Liebermann, the famous painter of Berlin, the head of the Academy of Art. And on the other side, I suggest that one should display the letters from Max Liebermann's wife from the concentration camps, begging the Gestapo to let her out because she was married to a very famous Berliner. So the kind of doubling, and again, these spaces of the void are different acoustically. They have different material. They are moments slightly out of the sequence, a kind of small interruption which is cutting through in a irregular way throughout the exhibition experience. Next one, please. Again, the 2 sections, through the bridges and through the museum, 2 different kind of building organizations. Next one. The straight wall, 2 symmetrical, one is looking in, cores. Next one, please. The windows, next one. Some analysis of these walls. I just want to say that I was very naive because I thought, if you get the building on budget and you design windows and you even test them full scale, 1-to-1, and they work, everything will be fine. But I never realized one thing, which never struck me. You can draw and make anything, but you have to have the willingness of the workers to build it. Yeah, because you can draw anything and you can have approvals from government and you can even have right cost estimates. But you have to have the willingness of people who are on the site to build it. And somebody said to me, you can design all of this, but nobody will ever build it. And I said, that's I never thought of that. But I was very, very fortunate that the spirit and people who worked on this project in our office in Berlin, particularly Matthias Reiser, who was the project leader, that the atmosphere on the site, this building would never have been built had the workers not wanted to build it. And they wanted to build it. And I never lectured to them, and sometimes I appeared on the site very incognito, asking the formwork, people who were doing the formwork, to older German workers. And I said, what do you think of the building? What do you think of what you're doing? And they said, we think we're doing something crazy. But right after that, they said, but we know how to do this kind of work. And look. And they were doing these formworks, which were amazingly complex. I couldn't believe that anybody without experience in projective geometry and 3 years of university education could even figure this out. But they were able to do it, and they were proud to do it. And I think that's somehow key. I think one has to get on the wavelength of the people who are involved. Not only people who are going to use the building, but the people who make the building. And also that's part of a kind of luck. Next one, please. The windows. Next one, please. Next one. Next one, please. The Baroque building, very different. Next one. Next one. Next one, please. I just want to point out in construction that you will notice that the building has no metal frames. I wanted to eliminate all metal frames in the building and make the interior very different from that very bold exterior of the building. A kind of very thin, ethereal white interior for the works and a very different exterior. And that's the logic of how the windows are constructed, which are folded in and dematerialized into kind of structural glazing, which has no other demarcation than just a small gap between the plasterwork and the glazing itself. Next one, please. And here it is, actually, the close-up in the library. All the glass, all of it is glass, and there's just a groove. Next one, please. And I show it in the workrooms up in the upper level. I was very concerned that the light quality in these offices be interesting. It's not just offices, but each office should be interesting, humane, interesting to work in. And even though the offices have doubled because of the unification, many more offices now, they're much smaller, still I think each office is different. Each one has a light which both comes from the skylights and from the Berlin viewpoints and places to look out. Next one, please. And the walls of the museum, the integration of all the technical, the lighting systems. I think that's very important because in most museums this is a very, even my friends' buildings always have something on the ceilings. And we attempted to put them into line. And they are. The lighting, the speaker system, the alarms, everything is in the lines themselves. And next one, please. And there are the lines on the outside. Of course, they are just the normal zinc folds of the rooftop construction, but very vernacular. I always paid my homage to Schinkel because I discovered Schinkel when I started doing this project. And later on, he became popular in Berlin because they think he built cubes and things like that. But Schinkel was a real genius, and he said in one of his letters, if you're going to want to succeed in Berlin, he said, use as much zinc as you can. So, and then I discovered he used as much zinc, as he could. So I think I did make the largest zinc building, I think, in Berlin so far. Next one, please. And of course, all the problems of air and water and so on are integrated into this facade and are part of the depth of it, which also screens the light and acts as a buffer towards this thin side. The folds are very, very complex, and I think it's just about the limit of what one can do with zinc. It's folded many times. It's a very thin plane, which keeps being folded. But I think had we put one more fold, they would have said we won't do it. Next one, please. Here is the view from the Exile or Immigration Street towards the garden. And the garden is the only structure in the building which is totally rectilinear and has these 48 plus 1, 49 columns filled with earth. Next one, please. And the whole thing is tilted hard on the ground. I mean, it has stones, this is not the final surface. Earth is inside, hidden, and the vegetation grows inversely. And it's a very disorienting space. When you come out into the garden, you feel dizzy, and it works. Really, it's very dizzying. Everything seems to be in the wrong position. Next one, please. Which is part of that. And there is the garden across, looking from the museum towards the Holocaust Tower and towards the housing blocks. It's part of, again, a vista. Next one, please. The building towards Alexanderplatz. Next one, please. Next one, please. I should point out that the zinc is not the pre-weathered kind, because there are zincs that are stabilized. This zinc will change. It will take about 10 years and will discolor. And it is my intention, and we've studied it, that this zinc will be different on the different parts of the building because it's open southwest, northeast. So because of wind conditions, because of rain conditions, the building will become a kind of gray-blue and discolored. The only sharp thing will remain the cuts, and that is, of course, it will take time till that effect is completed on the site. Next one, please. Next one. the building will open at the beginning of next year as a museum, and I'm involved through the Senate asked me to be involved in leading a committee of experts and curators to how this building will be, what will be the positioning of objects, where will things go, and of course there are many controversies, where objects go and where the Jewish Museum begins and the Berlin Museum stops. And I've always intended this museum to be not easy to organize because it doesn't have any boundaries in which to put things. And I've always thought that if that exercise becomes easy, then the museum will have failed, because that history will never be easy and will forever become actually more complex. Next one, please. And in the early morning, next one, please. You can see the steep cuts. They're all in different angles, facing different. Sometimes they close up from certain views and open from others. Next one, please. Looking through the building. Next one, please. Next one, please. And next one. Is the ground is at this level here. Next one, please. Important, exhibitions at night and use of the building and lighting of the building vis-a-vis what is around it. Next one, please. This is a recent photograph, and I like it because the building really doesn't appear. One can hardly find it. It's right here because it's very, very modestly aligned with Friedrichstrasse, Wilhelmstrasse, and Lindenstrasse. Next one, please. And from the air, one can see the tip just where Sharon curves the street. Just where the building is bracketed in the, this dimension is the same as this dimension. And what is so interesting to me is that at the end of the day, the building, which is the newest one, looks like the oldest one. Next one, please. Thank you.
If it's not too late, but maybe we're feeling too tired. You don't think? Was it too long?
Maybe for 5-10 minutes, Daniel will take some questions, and I think there's a microphone that Joe has. Who's going to start? Jeremy, can you take the mic?
I was looking at that book, which Alain Binet's photographs in it before, and it seemed to me that it kind of captured a moment within the building which said everything that you've said. And I was wondering how you felt about the idea of occupation of the building, of how that kind of essence, which you can talk about so passionately now. I mean, not often does one get an architect talking about their building under construction with that kind of passion. What happens when it's completed, whether you feel it's going to kind of get defiled or whether you think that's a critical moment?
Well, I love Helen Binet's photographs, but I think a building is not a photograph. Of course, we view buildings because we know they're photographs, and we sometimes expect to see the photograph when we go to the Parthenon. And it's always disappointing because it doesn't look as good as a photograph. But my point is that I think the building is open, and as I said, it's not just a very simple thing just to tell a story. It is part of that history, and I think given what the workers told me, one of the workers said to me, "Mr. Libeskind, I didn't understand the building until I put the plaster on. Now it looks not right." He said, "Before I was very confused by the building, and now when we put the plaster, it looks fine. It's a perfectly good museum." So I think people will make their own. Sure, people will occupy it. People will come looking for different things, not involved at all in the history of Berlin. Who will they be? People from Poland, people from Turkey, the others in Berlin who want to know what the city was like, what is it going to be tomorrow, where are the good maps, what do we look for? So I think it is about that moment, and you're right, it is about a moment. And I often think that had I won the competition, had the building come up for discussion just a month earlier in Berlin, it would never be built. And it had come up a month later in Berlin, it would never be built. Really? I know that earlier it would never have been built because they would say, we don't really want this building. And a little later, the BAU director said, we don't want this building. Why is it, it's too late. So it itself, I do believe, sits in the void. It is, because it's a moment of the turn of history in Berlin. And it's a kind of lucky moment because buildings, some great buildings that I admire, which were never materials because they were out of synchrony of time. They were either ahead of time or behind the time. And that's a lucky part of that moment. So sure, and the building is a living entity. People will come to it. It will age. It will be old. It will, it will have many footsteps in it. But I still think that it will continue in its light. And I do believe that it's, I've been there so many times. And it's not that easy. And I know it in plan. And I could even probably draw the plan. I say probably because it's a real effort. So I think it's not really a building that will suffer from that kind of a moment. But who knows? Everything is possible.
It's a two-part question, really. The first part was, I'm struck in the first presentation of the Nussbaum Museum that I remember being very impressed by the German building industry's tendency to document itself, its representation of its own processes, concrete, window detailing, roof detailing. It seems that the best that I've ever seen personally. And the question related to that tendency to document every aspect of construction, because you've included a 2.3 meter, the minimum
distance
dimension section of the museum, is there a really strong interaction in the work between what you find documented by the building industry and the sorts of spaces that you're trying to project? And the second part of the question is whether, it's a simple question, are you a fatalist?
No, definitely not. I mean, if you say it in the sense of Diderot, Jacques the fatalist, well, that's different, but not in a kind of profane, no.
But in the sense of, you seem to come back to the idea of things that, for example, the three arches, or things that seem to have been meant to happen.
Okay, let me answer that.
Is there a sense of fate or things having been meant to happen?
Well, definitely there's a sense of history, because history cannot be changed. One thing for sure, things in history cannot be changed. We might want to change them, we might wish them to have been different, but they are eternal. They are the moment of intersection of the time with eternity, and I really do strongly experience that. But to answer your question about documentation and representation of construction, you're right. As I was loading these slides in Berlin, one of the people, Barbara Holzer, who works on this project in Berlin, said to me, God, this is strange. You've never shown this project before. The Nussbaum. I've actually shown it only, I think, once in the beginning, and I've never shown it. For some reason, I didn't show it. And she said, we thought you're never going to show it because it should not be a building that people would know from. It just has, just a big wall in the town with these things, and maybe it'll be discovered. And I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe it's a mistake to show it and to discuss it in that way. But I do believe that this process that you're speaking about, negotiations of town representation, are anywhere public. So, of course, to achieve that space, that narrow space of a museum, it's not easy because there are museum directors, there are city authorities, there's the government. One cannot just do what one wants to do. You cannot just say, you'd be left out of the boardroom the first minute you would come with such a proposal. But to negotiate, to try to encourage a different idea of what the museum might be. And of course, there were very many discussions about what will such a space be? Now, how can we predict, what will people do in the space? In fact, one of the Irish delegations who visited the Berlin Museum of Jewish Museum said to somebody who was taking them over, have you done studies on what will happen to people who work in this museum? No, we didn't. Because I do believe that architecture cannot really ultimately be represented. It really is the building. You can, of course, try to represent it, communicate it by documents. You have to represent it to get it built. But ultimately, it's only that part of it, or that dimension, which is not representable, which makes it architecture. And what that dimension is, of course, would require a longer discourse. But I do believe that that's really the architecture that we have. It's the places we go to and we say, no drawings and no simulations would have allowed us to be there. And that has to do, of course, with a particular constellation of light, not only physical light, but the moment of time. If I can answer the question this way, I can't do it any better. Okay, I think it's late.
There's one last question.
Okay.
There seems to be a rather difference in methods between Berlin and the V&A. I'd like you to say simply whether I'm right or not. Which is that in Berlin the plan and the structure of the building was developed through a very kind of highly structured succession of drawings and overlaying of diagrams and patterns and so on, whereas the V&A is really like a sketch which is now becoming analysed and acquiring a sort of mathematical structure. I mean, is that right?
I wouldn't be fooled, because I want to say that up to now, we just counted, we have made 50 models of the V&A. I mean, I've just shown a selected few. And I have to say, I might be one of the most anachronistic architects, not really very modern, because we have a lot of computers and a lot of tools, but I do work a lot with just building the things, the objects, in model form 1 to 50, 1 to 20, 1 to 1, large pieces. So I wouldn't say there is a fundamental, of course there is a difference in the space, because the Berlin building is in a kind of linear tract of land which is open, and the V&A is actually an actual closed-in volumetric site. So of course there are differences of approach, but I think the method is perhaps, well, I don't know what method I use, but it's analogous, because even though I did not develop it from a series of systematic sectional diagrams, I did develop it from those intersecting line of where the building turns towards Henry Cole away from Exhibition Road, and how it ascends to view itself and the garden back into the program. So maybe it is, of course it is a different spirit, but I think in both projects I do, and I think in all my work, I'm very much interested to see the history as something which is not over. And that's, I think, what is important for me to say, that history isn't over. Even the things we think are over and have been recorded and we have them in books and we believe they are finished and done with, are not over. According to everybody who's ever thought about it, Buddhists, Jews, Islam, anybody who's ever thought, they know it's never going to be over in that way yet. So I think that is really the condition of architecture, that if history is not over, if it is happening now, then we are also responsible. We can't just feel as outsiders to the process, because we'll be accounted for in the final judgment. And okay, you don't have to be religious to believe in final judgment, but in any case, a kind of ethics of the architectural operation. And that's interesting. Thank you.
Could I just say that it's fantastic, after what Daniel just said about this issue of history, that of course it means that the visa will never run out. It will go on ad infinitum, which is a great thing. There is a book launch also upstairs. There's a book which has Helen Binet's photographs, called A Passage Through Silence and Light, and there is a book launch up in the members' room upstairs, and I think everyone is welcome. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.